Well, welcome again, everybody, to More Joy, the podcast that is alive and well so that your joy might be full.
That's right. I like that.
Isn't that pretty cool? I'm trying to get better at that. Trying to let us know how I'm doing, right? She always lets me know, but you're nicer.
That's true.
But no, I'm Brad. This is my lovely wife,
Celina,
and here we are again.
who is always truthful in love.
Yeah.
Yes.
True. Always true in love. Could stand a little more Nerf on her baseball bats.
Well,
sometimes there's
it
that.
works when there's no Nerf.
Well, it definitely gets your attention. That's for sure. So anyway, we're here, glad to be back. Thanks for joining us. Hey, thanks for liking and subscribing. And just real quick, if you want to subscribe to BGTV, we're so grateful that they let us come in and take part in their ministry here at the studio and put out content, not just us, but many of our ministry friends. Actually, to give a plug to our pastor, Pastor Mark and Jennifer Matchin, who do the Forever Free broadcast. You need to check that out if you haven't already.
Yes, you do. Foundational for your Christian life.
Changing,
yes.
Right? And one of my kind of like uncles, my crazy uncle in the face, Dr. Jim McCann, is here on BGTV with us. I went to his church as a very young man when all of my motivations weren't necessarily godly nor pure, but he was still a loving, caring father, uncle figure, pastor. So you want to check out his program, The Revivalist, as well.
I'm glad you're real.
You just got to be real.
Then you married me, and everything was awesome.
And everything is better than I ever deserved.
That's right.
And that's not just me being nice and trying to get points.
Oh.
Even though points are awesome.
Yes.
But that is actually the truth. So, but hey, just so glad. Just do that. Hit the like and subscribe stuff for BGTV. I encourage you to support them financially as well. If you found any benefit from the programs that the different people produce. They do all of it on a faith-based
There's
thing.
something powerful about exchanging that when you receive.
Yes.
And it's helpful and it's growing you, and then you give of your substance and your blessing.
So
that
good.
Exchange, it almost like seals the word
Yes,
that's going
it does.
in there, and it causes it to grow more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's our wonderful plug for BGTV as we get into this. But we're going to kind of pick up because last time we had a I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
You went off script, which is not normal for you.
No, it's not.
Not that we have. I have
I'm
rough
exploring
notes.
new horizons because I'm a grandma now.
Yeah, you are. And so we're talking about being grandparents and talking about, again, and guys, listen, we're still stuck on that verse in Song of Solomon about it's the small foxes that destroy the vine of love. Now, that is directly in context talking about marriage, and it's the little things that get our marriages. It's never the big things. But I also want to apply it's the little things that get us in all areas of life.
That's right.
Positive or negative.
That's right.
So even though I know that verse is written in a negative context, that there's little things chewing away at the vine of our life.
Be aware of it.
But there's the positive little things that build our life.
Yes.
And I haven't shared this example, but I remember, say, when we were back in Bible college and we were almost married. And before I started working there at Rhema in the church, I worked at, I wish I could remember the name of that nursery. Do you remember the name of the nursery?
I don't.
But I worked at a nursery, a greenhouse that was there in Tulsa, a local greenhouse, and they hired me. And long story, my parents had a greenhouse, so I had some experience, and I enjoyed plants and gardening. And so it was a fun fit for a job, and so I worked at this greenhouse. But they had a drip irrigation system. And for those that are watching that don't know what that is part of my job was, I remember at Christmas time there were poinsettias like by the thousand in these massive greenhouses. And so they'd have all the little pots out there, and my job was I went and I put these little lead, they looked like a teardrop, and they were a plum weight and had holes in it, and I would drop. And my boss would say, Brad, every pot needs 2, 3, 4, depending on the plant, of the little weight things in each pot. So my fun job, I wish we had earbuds back then, and I could have got a lot more, but I had to go put little plum weights in each little 4-inch pot, and that's what I did for hours when that happened. And
Thousands of them.
And then I would go to the control panel and I would type in so many drips per hour.
That's so good.
Right. And then the water system would work and it would drip irrigate our plants so we didn't have to stand there and water them all the time. Now, I say all that to say this, because listen, it's drip irrigation is the success to life.
Amen.
I
love that.
In life, it's not the big
Gushers.
gusher. I'm going to use Rodney's new favorite phrase, yo mama. It's not the big yo mama stuff, right? It's not, I had to throw it in there for Rodney's sake. It's not the big things that happen. It's literally the little drips, the things that are just happening on the daily, on the regular, that feed our life.
Yes.
Right? Again, we did math. I remember, I did math. And I can do math, it sounded funny, but
he uses his fingers.
I can keep my shoes on too, just in case you're wondering. But I mean, it was like almost 12,000 church services. And that was a number of years ago. So you could probably add into the couple of thousand that we've been to. And I can only count 6 church services that I can say there was a marking God moment that happened in those 6 services that radically impacted my life out of 12,000. Does that mean I shouldn't have gone to the other, whatever 11,990, whatever? No, there was something dripped into me in every time I went to church. From a song to a verse to a point in a message to a move of the Spirit there was a drip. There's always a constant little thing to pop. Like I said, it's the little things that build our life. And that's what we really want to talk about in these first episodes with you is some of these little things. So now, with saying all that, because we're talking about grandparenting, it starts with how you view it.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Perspective is everything.
And you brought up a great word on the last time, which I think is legacy. So I can view grandparenting as my opportunity to spoil my grandchild.
Right.
Or I can look at it as...
And let me just say this. You spoil the grandchild, but who is it really about?
Me.
Because it makes you feel good. Yeah. It makes you feel needed. It makes you feel a certain way. And so... yeah, I'm just throwing that question out there. Yeah,
and that's a great... Well, and again, it does no one any good. Because it actually, at the end of the day, it doesn't do me any good to spoil. I mean, again, who does anybody... I mean, it's the only time, again, this is that small fox again, right? Nobody likes spoiled milk. Nobody likes spoiled meat. Nobody likes spoiled leftovers.
Right.
Right. Nobody likes, the only time we're ever positive is when we're talking about grandchildren.
And we're going to spoil them.
And we're going to spoil them.
It's one thing to really bless them.
Yes.
And see what kind of stuff they like. And because you are getting to know them, now you go ahead of go get ahead of them and give them something they want.
Yeah.
You're constantly thinking about them. So we need to define our terms. We're not saying you can't love on your grandkids and have a really good time doing it. But we just wanted to pick on this word because that's the kind of stuff, if we're not careful,
it spoils the vine.
It spoils the vine because there's a mentality behind that. There's a paradigm behind the whole, let me just spoil the kids and then send them off and we don't have to deal with them anymore. There's a mindset behind that we want to question, why are we doing that? What am I actually saying with my actions? And when I say this phrase, what am I actually communicating?
Yeah. Well, and I was reading this morning, it's in Proverbs 13, and it said, at the end of that chapter, it says, he that hates his child is slow to discipline the child. Right. If I can do a little, redneck translation or the Brad translation, the Brad paraphrase version is this: he that wants to spoil his child, right? I don't actually love my grandkid. And I know, and maybe I can hear play buttons being paused or whatever all over the world at that thought. It might be new, but listen to me. Nobody likes a spoiled brat, and that includes yours.
Right.
Sometimes we can do that and go, yeah, I don't like their spoiled brat, but my little spoiled Johnny, my little pumpkin boo-boo head that I have spoiled, everybody loves my little pumpkin. No, they don't. Nobody likes my spoiled kids like they don't like anybody else. But I want to say this, but the rest of that verse says this. It says, but those that love their children are diligent to discipline them.
Yeah.
And I want to unpack that real quick and then let that lead into where we're going with your word on legacy. Unless you got something, I can hold my thought.
I don't remember. It's okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Because I've been thinking, we've been talking about diligence because, we were inspired by a minister that came a few weeks ago to our church. And he talked about how that diligence is our precious possession. I believe that's in Proverbs 12 somewhere. It says diligence is man's precious possession. And then I was actually thinking about it today. This is kind of fresh off the press. Is diligence can be summed up, or I think I wrote it down as the offspring of diligence is, well, I'm actually I don't want to get it wrong, so let me just write it down, because I wrote down consistency, thoroughness, and awareness are the children of diligence.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Right? So how do I know? How do I define diligence? I'm consistent, I'm thorough, and I'm aware.
Yeah.
Right? And so with that whole thought of consistency is I now look at our beautiful little granddaughter as, her mother's name is Sophia. Many of you know our children, but she's Sophia 2.0, which means we just get to continue in the same consistency we had with her mother.
So now what we get to do, let me paint this picture. The picture we want to say, the more joy picture.
Yeah.
Okay, the more joy is if we come alongside Sophia and her husband, and now we are walking with them and supporting what they're doing. We're now walking along with them and literally in agreement with them. We are corroborating everything they're doing. We are putting that stamp of approval. And when baby looks at mom and dad and then looks at grandma and grandpa and they're all saying the same thing, can you imagine the consistency that is going to be in her little world? And therefore the stability to go, this is how it's done.
Yeah.
This is truth.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's so good because, we've said it for years. Imagine, if you will, what if in your family, your children, your grandchildren, what if every key person in their life was on the same page?
Aunties and uncles and
Everybody.
Cousins and grandparents on both sides.
On both sides. What if every key person was actually on the same page, supporting mom and dad, backing them up? Now, the only time I've looked at my kids is now you come at me and it's something outside the Bible and you lose me. I can't support that. At best I can do is be quiet. And pray, right? But if you're swinging for the fence, if you're building on the word of God, right, and you're going for it, man, I'm behind you.
Yeah.
And now here's the reason why, with our time that remains. I don't want to run out of time on this one because it's good. Because it's that, again, we're talking about the small foxes, the daily drips. So we have been building since Sophia was born for this day.
Yes. Yeah.
And actually, we've been building in our mind's eye for our great-grandchildren.
That's right.
So actually, in my mind's eye, there's a whole nother generation coming that I've actually been endeavoring to make daily decisions for.
And build towards.
So it's not just my generation only. Because again, if I can just pick on us a little bit, us North American U.S. citizens, we can be trapped in a singular generation mindset.
Yes. Yeah.
We can be trapped in the mind, I live for my generation.
Yeah. And then I raise kids and get them out and they're done. And now they're on their own, right?
Yeah, because we even have it like this. We even have it and say, as I get older, that the next generation. And I can have
kids
a disdain.
These days, right?
Kids these days, right? Right. And I can have a disdain in my voice. It's a small fox.
Yes.
And it destroys the vine of
is.
multi-generational legacy. Now listen to me, because I want to unpack this, tell a story, and off to the races we'll go. And it may be a whole nother show after this. I don't know. But so we know that minimally God thinks in 3 generations. right? How do we know that? Okay, well, we know him as the God of Abraham
Isaac and Jacob.
3 generations. Abraham, Paul said of Timothy, he said, hey, Timothy, I know your unfeigned faith because it was in your grandmother
and your mother.
And I see it's in you.
Yeah.
So Paul says that faith in Timothy was 3 generations deep, right? Then we know in Proverbs, again, I think it's in that same chapter 13, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children and his children. So he's a good man. So he leaves an inheritance to his children and his children's children. So in just real quick, 3 little glimpses into the word, we see that God's smallest thought pattern is 3 generations.
To the point where their language was never grandfather. You never hear the term grandfather. We just say our fathers. And I mean, that's up the chain 14 generations, if you read it that way. And it's like, oh, our fathers.
Yes.
Right?
So there was no, and I know that busts our bubbles a little bit. Listen to me. There is no, because people say, well, Brad, do y'all teach on grandparenting? Kinda. Because I can't find the term grandparent in the Bible. All I can find is I get to be a father.
A concept of legacy.
For many generations, right? And so now I get to tell
Go ahead.
My favorite, Rodney, you like this? I think you're like, I'm going to tell you my favorite Bible story.
Yeah.
Right, here's my favorite. Have you ever heard of the story of the Rechabites? So Rodney's back. Here's a producer. Pastor Rick's with us in studio. He's back. Pastor Rick, have you ever heard the story of the Rechabites? No. Okay. So few people have. It is my favorite all-time Bible story outside of the Jesus stories. But it's found in Jeremiah chapter 35. So I'm going to give you the Brad version of this. You can go home and read it. So Jeremiah the prophet is given a word from God. He says, hey, listen, I need you to call the leaders of the Rechabite clan, bring them to the temple. You're going to put them, and he names a room. You're going to put them in this room over here, and you're going to give all of them a big old bowl of wine and tell them to drink, and that's my instruction. So Jeremiah the prophet does what God says. He calls the leaders of the Rechabite family together, puts them in the room, pours all of them a big old bowl of wine. And if you remember, it wasn't very popular, or wasn't really a good idea to not do what the prophet would say. Remember those kids that called the one prophet bald and bears came out and ate everybody, right? So it was not really a kosher thing to not do it. So they're standing in Brad's imagination.
They're all standing
there. They got their big cup of wine, and they're all kind of looking at each other, and nobody's drinking, and they're standing there kind of awkward. And finally, the elder leader of this family steps up and says, Mr. Prophet, we can't drink the wine. And the prophet says, why can't you drink the wine? He says, well, about 300 years ago, if you do the math, our forefather who founded this family, who we're named after, gave us 3 commands. He commanded us to no longer own property and live in homes, to not have vineyards or tend vines. We are to live in tents and to tend animals. And we have kept his word for 300 years, and no one has drunk wine in 300 years in our family. And then the word of the Lord comes to Jeremiah and says, if my people would have kept my word, like these family members kept the word of their father, then what's about to happen to Israel wouldn't happen.
Can you imagine?
And then if to finish the story and then to come back to the thought. So what happened is Assyria comes in. This was the great leading away of Israel into captivity. Except when they came in, Babylon, Assyria, whoever it was, they came in, they did not take the Rechabites because they had no territory and they had no vineyards. They got to stay in their land.
Their promised land. Their
promised land, because they obeyed the word of their father for 300 years. Now here's the thought. Rodney, what do you want your family to look like 300 years from now? What is my 300-year vision for my family
Yes.
That if I could go there in my mind's eye, what would I want in 300 years down the road in the year, what would that be, 2325? What would I want the Hollimans to look like
Right.
in 300 years?
Right.
And what words could I leave behind that might inspire 300 years of faithful family vision?
That's right.
Because that's what saved a whole household in the day of destruction. We're over here trying to pray for revival today. and I don't disagree that we should, but why don't we sit there and say, what if we had a whole raft of believing families that had a 300-year vision? Right?
Yeah.
And if a day of destruction came to our land, they would be immune.
Yes.
Because
Untouchable.
they would literally be untouchable because
Yeah.
they obeyed the words of their fathers.
Yeah.
And guys, listen, if you're watching and listen, I know that might be a brain bender
Yes.
because we're just trying to make it to 65
Right.
so I can play golf every Friday
Right.
or I can go fishing.
Yeah.
But what if God's design was bigger than we ever imagined? What if we could leave a legacy? And again, and so Brad, well, that sounds, how do we do that? We do that by daily.
Yes. I was just going to say,
Dripping. Go ahead.
you go all the way to the vision. What is it that we want to see? And then you reverse engineer that and go, then therefore today we need to X.
Do this.
We need to XYZ, and then just be consistent and all those things we've been talking about.
Be
for dailies.
consistent, thorough, and aware.
And that means to
diligent.
be diligent.
That's what diligence means. I'm
Right.
going to be consistent. I'm going to be thorough, and I'm going to be aware, which consistency, now again, and I'm trying to be nice. Pastor Rick, I'm a nice guy. You know me some. I try to be a nice guy. But I say sometimes unnice sounding things, and I don't mean to because
They're just challenging.
try harder. Pastor Rick says, try harder, Brad. Try harder. Hey, but listen, consistency doesn't have an expiration date.
No, it does not.
Thoroughness doesn't have an expiration
Just
date.
keep being thorough day after day after day.
Awareness doesn't have an expiration date. Listen, it really is. I want to encourage you, challenge you to stop thinking this in your family, well, my job's done.
Right.
Because that's dangerous grandparenting.
Yes.
It's dangerous for me to say, well, hey, you know what? My kids are all married.
I done raised my kids.
I got them. They're out there. My job's done. Not according to God. Not according to our Father. Right? I get to, now does my role change? Yes.
Yes.
Does some of my dailies change? Yes. That's part of being aware. I have to be aware of the new role that I step into. But my job to consistently drip legacy never stops. Right? It never ends. And so that's why I'm super excited to actually be really a weird granddad. Because
We've always been weird, dear.
We've always been weird, dear. But what do I mean by that? I'm not going to spoil them and send them home.
No.
I'm not going to tank them up on sugar and go, bye. Good luck to you, my children. That's a great way to end your ability to have legacy. Because then your kids don't want to send their kids to you. Mine is, and our goal is to go, I want to be the grandparent that they can count on.
Yes.
I want to be the grandparent that they know they can drop them off at our place.
And it'll be consistent.
And it'll be consistent with what they're doing at their house so that they don't have to undo things for 3 days because I messed up my kids' plan. That I get to come alongside them and help them and keep dripping legacy into my grandchildren so that when I send them home to their parents, the parents are now blessed and benefited because, man, Dad helped.
Yeah.
When Dad came alongside us and supported us in what we were doing and is building with us. Right. Okay. Again, our time ran out and I got to go. Last story though. This is it. One of my favorite.
Okay.
So I remember hearing the story of a real story that there were 3 generations of people that built a cathedral. A grandfather, a son, and the grandson all worked. Right. And the grandson was the one who was telling this story. He says, I worked on this wall, but come downstairs. My dad worked on this wall. Now let's come down to the foundation. Hey, my granddad worked on this wall. Guys, listen to me. Just that real quick story. That's what I want.
Yes.
I want my grandkids to come back and say, this was all started by my crazy granddad, Brad, who just imagined we could live life differently. Anyway, hey guys, send your questions with that info@thehollimans.com. We'd love, again, we're trying to garner and build more questions. And in coming episodes, we want to take time in each episode to answer some of your questions. So info@thehollimans, you can do it there. Again, you can find all things Holliman at our webpage. And as well, if you'd like to help support us in what we're doing here, you'll find a way to do that on the webpage as well. We love you guys, appreciate you, appreciate again BGTV and all that they do for us. Like, subscribe, comment, hook up with what's happening here, as we said at the top of this broadcast, and then we'll see you at the next episode.